now, because I believe in grace through faith in all dispensations. Huh. At least that's what the Peter Ruckman guys tell me. New video out today. Gene Kim. Attacking people who attack dispensational salvation. In which he says we're a small band of people. You know, I'm fairly new to dispensationalism myself. Within, 5 years or something. And really, dispensationalism is just a teaching tool that people who teach and run ministries use to teach Scripture. That's really what it is. Common man doesn't have a whole lot of use for it, other than clearing up some things in the Bible. Why am I a dispensationalist? Well, I was in Seventh-day Adventist land. And what got me out of that was dispensationalism with the Saturday Sabbath. And honestly, I believe if you're not a dispensationalist, I don't know why you wouldn't be holding to the Saturday Sabbath, because that was an eternal, that was an ongoing thing. Because if you're non-dispensationalist, you believe that you're grafted into the Jews, so you should be following those covenants and commandments that were for the Jews, because you're grafted in. Dispensationalism sorts that out for you in other scriptures. So that's why I refer to myself as a dispensationalist. However, now we're running into people using the term dispensationalist and applying it to things that dispensations never taught. Never taught. And we made several videos between me and Ed covering this. I have been searching and searching and searching for someone other than Peter Ruckman who has taught that people in the Old Testament were saved by works. And I have not come up with anybody. I'm sure there's somebody out there who taught Ruckman. I don't know. But it's not a very popular idea. And the big problem with this is you creep in more and more heresy. I was fine to let it go, okay, with you want to believe Jews are saved by works, whatever, okay? But then what happens is you take that, well, they were saved by works because of this, and then we're coming up to the tribulation, and then we can't reconcile James, so we have to take James and put that in a different dispensation, and you mess up the Bible. You're taking dispensationalism off into a completely wild place where you're hyper-dispensational, is what you are. Or in the case of Ruckman, you get some stupid idea in your head, and you just run with it. And then you make your teachers at your school teach everybody else that this is a fact and this is correct and it's never been disputed by anybody anywhere ever. What a dumpster fire that Ruckman has. Do I need to go back through everything Ruckman did? I kind of feel like it. Because the kooky doctrines of the racism stuff and dispensational salvation, all of these weird things are coming out of the Ruckman camp. Nobody else teaches this stuff. Nobody. And I have several articles up here to show that. But first we're going to watch Gene Kim.
For 3 years, I have not mentioned this because dispensationalism, the Lord has mightily used our ministry to rescue many people from wrong doctrine. Now, there's a certain scattered group who are wrong dispensationalists, but I didn't worry too much about them because they're a very small group. However, a lot of...
Very small group. He's talking about anyone who does not believe in a faith work system. Very small group.
People have been converted to the truth of dispensationalism. And it's because of that now what they're doing is they're typing down...
Converted from what? Dispensationalism is just a tool you use to read the Bible correctly. That's it. It's just a tool. It's not a doctrine. You can call it kind of, sort of a doctrine, but it really is just a tool. When you're looking at Scripture, what do you got to take into account? Who is being spoken to? Jews? Gentiles? Is it Old Testament? Is it New Testament? Jews under the covenant? You take that stuff into account. This is common sense reading. Common sense reading. When you come into a doctrinal issue, then you bring in dispensationalism and the character of God. Also, when you don't understand what the Bible is talking about. Why would God do this? Why would God do that? Well, how come there's these requirements here and not over here? Doesn't seem very fair what they're doing, where the Jews have to work for salvation and nobody else does. And what causes problems now, if you're going to say there's works in the Old Testament, you have to say that only the Jews were saved in the Old Testament. That would make you a Calvinist. This is a Calvinist doctrine.
My name or other Bible believers with dispensation. And then by doing that, what they're going to find is they're going to find these wrong dispensationalists who are teaching heresy. Now, what you've got to understand is this. The Bible says in 2 Timothy 2:15, rightly dividing the word of truth.
We're always going to use 2 Timothy 2:15 for rightly dividing the Bible. Well, where's your other two verses? Right? By 2 or 3 witnesses, you have to make your doctrines established. It says that once in the Bible. Obviously, you do have to rightly divide. But this is the only thing that they have to hold up what they're saying. Oh, rightly dividing. I'm rightly dividing and you're not rightly dividing.
Truth. That means that there is a way to wrongly divide.
Right. Your way,
God put
Gene.
rightly divide for a reason. So just because you watch some guy online dividing the Bible,
Says a guy talking
being
online.
a dispensationalist, that doesn't mean that he's always right. He could be
Nope.
wrong. Now think about this.
That includes Peter Ruckman. That includes Peter Ruckman. Put yourself to your own standard. Now what happens here is he's gonna talk about Ed making a bunch of videos against Gene Kim or about this issue and saying, oh, he's got to harp on this and harp on this and harp on this and harp. And look, we make videos in response to videos that they come out with. Now I don't make videos one after another trying to prove dispensational faith through grace throughout everything. Grace through faith through the entire Bible. I don't put out video after video after video after video on that. Why? Because everybody already believes that. Gene Kim, them guys, Ruckmans, the Ruckmanite people, Brian Denlinger, they put out video after video after video on dispensational salvation, and then they turn their comments off or they block you from their channel when you say, hey, you're completely wrong. They are the ones who are trying to justify their doctrine. Them. We make response videos to what they are saying.
Doesn't Satan, his tendency is, if there's a doctrine that you're open-hearted to and you're accepting and you even accept wholeheartedly, couldn't Satan use that doctrine to abuse it in a way to twist you and guide you to a wrong direction? It does. So what I decided to do now is that I don't want to give attention to these people. A lot of them are actually losers because what they want to do is just critique Bible believers because they hit the age of...
There's this thing. See, if you're not with Gene Kim, you're not a Bible believer. So you get this word twisting stuff?
60 and they're grumpy, they're stuck at home, they turn white in the skin. Jeez. They got nothing to do except criticizing Gene Kim and other Bible believers. So I don't have time to waste with those.
And the reason that we criticize these guys is this guy runs a school. He's a pastor at a church. He is the guy teaching people. These are the people we attack. We don't attack random people on the street for what they believe. We might have a go back and forth in the comments with people. We don't make videos on this stuff. He is the one who is spreading the heretical idea that people are saved by works. He's the one.
Those guys, you know, so I've been keeping my mouth shut for 3 years. And it's really easy to crush these people. But I don't want to look like a circus monkey because these guys...
What he does is he blocks comments. I can crush you. I can crush you. And then he gets mad when we make videos. How else are we supposed to get in touch with them? Can't leave a comment.
What's
Same
evidence
thing
and
did.
proof that these guys are truly loser trolls
And Scott
is
Clark.
that they're going to post video after video after video after video
And here's another
against me or certain Bible believers endlessly.
Peter
That's their
Ruckman.
whole channel. Now, some of them might give the excuse, well, I'm trying to expose wrong doctrine. Okay, but in my church, I don't talk to you all the stinking time about one false prophet, Todd Friel, Ray Comfort. I don't do Ray Comfort like scores and scores of videos dedicated to just one person, because then that shows an obsession toward a person. A ministry
Welcome to the
is
internet.
dedicated to helping out people, souls, not picking which doctrine that you think is important and then you harp on that all day long. It shows a strength.
Doing YouTube videos has nothing to do with running a church. Someone ought to tell that to Brian Denlinger. He's trying to equate what he does for a sermon on Sunday to what's going on YouTube.
Obsession you have toward a person, not helping a soul. Because if you have a true desire to help souls, it's not just going to be that one particular wrong doctrine. You're going to help that person grow and do soul winning, get them involved in church, and especially.
But if they have a hang up on wrong doctrine, and they're hung up on that stuff, it's detrimental to their growth and their learning. I just assume people never heard of dispensations before. When this garbage comes in, people are saved by works at some point. Now, doesn't this kind of contradict the Bible? Oh no, because it's in the New Testament that it says you're not saved by works. So what about James? Oh well, move that. He's talking to Old Testament Jews. What? Is the Bible supposed to be that complicated? Now, here's what I see in dispensations, is God revealing himself to people over the course of time. More and more revelation, more and more of the character of God. You finally get to now, you have grace through faith. It always was. It always was. No one boldly said, have faith in God back then. They had a covenant system with the Jews to do their thing. Nobody. You got Abraham who says, yeah, good job, Abraham, for coming out here, and because you had faith in me, I'm going to do this, this, and this for you. Abraham didn't know it was his faith that saved him and made him righteous. God didn't tell him that. God said, I'm going to give you offspring as the stars in your own land, and all this stuff. It's the revelation that comes over time. When you finally get to in the church age, we know this is the understanding, grace through faith. And this is why God can't accept works of any kind for salvation. What is your faith in? Jesus Christ.
Especially if your online is only critiquing people, you're not trying to expose wrong doctrine. Because when you're trying to expose wrong doctrine.
Okay, he opened up this video, or at least this section of video. This is probably cut from a bigger one. Attacking a person. He's attacking Ed Feniger. Calling him old and a shut-in and a loser and a troll. And he is directly attacking Ed, not what Ed was saying or any of the points that he brought out or anything like that. He directly attacked the person, and then he has the gall to come out and say that we are personally attacking Gene Kim. I'm not personally attacking Gene Kim in any way, shape, or form. None of us are. We are attacking his doctrine, which is a Peter Ruckman doctrine. Really, I'm attacking Peter Ruckman. All of the guys who follow Ruckman all believe this nonsense. And they teach it to other teachers. That's a way bigger problem than just having a YouTube ministry with a few thousand subscribers or something, and you're the sole thing. It's way bigger than just Denlinger being out there. Because Denlinger's not doing anything but preaching to the squirrels. You know, he's just out there. Gene Kim and these guys are pretty active, really busy. And they're teaching this stuff to a lot of people. And it's just going to grow and grow and grow. That is why we make videos against this stuff.
It's not only going to be just critiquing. What you're also going to do, a ministry is about supporting people, helping them, getting them to soul win. But these people don't soul win.
How do you know that?
These people don't know what it's like to fellowship with brethren
How does he know that?
in a church and help out people in a church.
Sounds
All
like
they
a
want to do
personal
is
attack to
stay
me.
online and critique Bible believers because they want to look like they're the ones that are right. But then Jack Chick is wrong, Peter Ruckman is wrong, and then all these other Bible believers are wrong. They go to.
It depends on what you're talking about. Jack Chick had some stuff that's wrong in his stuff. Not a huge deal, but it's there. Peter Ruckman I didn't know much about the guy, but I'm finding out that, you know, all the stuff I don't know about, I'm assuming he is correct on. And the things that I do know about are this stuff, dispensational salvation and his racism stuff, and not considering babies alive until they take their first breath or they don't have a soul or something. You know, a lot of the nuts, wacko, cuckoo ideas. I know about those.
Hoffman, they go to all these other kinds of people. Davis, you know, we have him in England passing out tracts, you know, great blessing that person is. And they go attack like other people, Charles Lawson, a lot of other people. Now, I don't associate myself with all these people, but I am not a loser where I just harp on one person and I'm going to try to expose you something wrong with Charles Lawson. Isn't that weird? Amen. Isn't that weird? Because there are bigger heretics to fry. And I'm not saying Lawson's a heretic or these other people.
He caught himself. He caught himself. There are bigger heretics out there. He caught himself. Yeah. Good job, Gene.
Are heretics. What I'm pointing out is this. These people have a genuine love, and they believe in dispensationalism, the King James Bible. They're trying to help out a church, and they rescued a lot of souls out there and helped a lot of people. And your ministry is to expose these preachers.
And his insinuation is that people that have a problem with this doctrine don't do those things that he mentioned.
There's something wrong with you. Okay, so because of that, now I'm going to have to stomp on you. So I have no respect for you guys. Now, there's a doctrine which we believe in
No kidding. You don't take questions on most of your videos. There's no way to get in touch with you other than to make a video. And it's because you have no respect for anyone who has a different idea about dispensations. Now we know that's the spirit of Ruckman. None of the Ruckman people will be corrected. None. It's a sad thing. I'm Gene Kim. I have a PhD and I teach and I got a church and I do this and I can't be wrong and I have no respect for anybody who disagrees with me because I learned from Peter Ruckman, the greatest man alive. Dead now, was the greatest Bible scholar of all time, Peter Ruckman. Every one of these guys inserts PBI, Peter Ruckman, into every time I watched any of their videos. All of them. The exception of Denlinger, because he wants to be his own thing. He wants to do Denlingerism now. He wants to do that. But they all talk. PBI, PBI, PBI. Like that gives them the gold star. I can't be wrong. I came from Peter Ruckman. Peter Ruckman taught me. So?
Dispensationalism called dispensational salvations. Now, what is that? Now, a lot of people who converted to dispensationalism.
See? He makes it out like dispensational salvation is the only thing people have ever taught. But he even says, he writes it, dispensational salvation. He has to go, now what is that? Because people don't know. It's such a widely taught thing. People don't even know what it is.
Online. What's understandable is that they say that because of our videos on dispensations, particularly on the issue of salvation, that helped them. Now, I don't know how many of you, but how many of you also, what has been most helpful for you in dispensationalism was concerning the salvation issue, right?
Really?
So then this has been a lot of people online and for some of you as well concerning this.
I don't understand how, because even according to their messed up idea on dispensations, we're all saved by grace through faith today. So how does this affect somebody's salvation today? It doesn't. It doesn't. It just puts the foot in the door so you can put all these other kooky ideas like James is to the Jews in the tribulation. And the book of Hebrews to Revelation is written to the Jews in the tribulation. And put forth all these other kooky ideas. That's what it is. This isn't required doctrine for anybody to know to be saved. Or the Ruckman version of it.
Now, there's this group that wants to attack this. So what they're going to do is this group.
Okay, this is every dispensationalist out there that I can see other than Peter Ruckman. We're going to take a look at a couple articles. This video is going to be a while. I'll just I'm already 20 minutes in and I'm halfway through the video, so this is going to be a while. I was going to try and condense it and get my thoughts together, and I'm like, I'm going to be looking at notes and I'm going to forget something. I'm going to take it nice and slow. We're going to start looking at some articles here. See whether or not this is true, that every dispensationalist believes in dispensational salvation. This is spiritandtruth.org. I think I have to move this around a little bit. Hopefully that doesn't mess anything up. Okay, does dispensationalism teach two ways of salvation? Anthony C. Garland. Various times opponents of dispensationalism have made a charge that it teaches two ways of salvation. Another problem with teaching this garbage is they are lumped in with all the other dispensationalists out there, and everybody believes, oh, you believe in works for salvation. I have an article on that people writing anti-dispensational articles, the dispensational heresies, these articles like that, which are available everywhere on the internet, they're all referencing this dispensational salvation garbage. Opponents of dispensationalism have made charge that indicates two ways of salvation. Some have claimed two ways of salvation to be an explicit teaching among earlier advocates of dispensationalism. Even if not advocated by more recent dispensationalists, others have held that it is an inherent characteristic of dispensational system itself, which results in two ways of salvation. The purpose of this article is threefold: to set forth once again that dispensationalism teaches one way of salvation, to explore why the charge of teaching people multiple ways arose, and 3, to suggest the confusion over the matter is due in part to key differences in eschatology rather than soteriology, whatever, between the different systems. Now, I want to go down here to what changes and what remains the same. I'll link these articles in the description. Ryrie identifies various aspects related to salvation, some of which changed over time and some of which remained unchanged. The basis of salvation in every age is death of Christ. The requirement for salvation in every age is faith, and the object of faith in every age is God. The content of faith changes in various dispensations. It is this last point, of course, that distinguishes dispensationalism from covenant theology, but it is not a point at which charge the teaching two ways of salvation can be attached. It simply recognizes the obvious fact of progressive revelation, and progressive revelation by God. So dispensations essentially are. So in this article, it's a very long article. It goes through everything, and we're pointing back at Ruckman for people who are teaching this nonsense. And it says, one way of salvation. Let it be said up front that normative dispensationalism has never taught anything other than single way of salvation. The matter of unfortunate statements taken in isolation to be discussed later. Apparently, Schofield, in one of his notes in the book of John, hints at a dispensation or a salvation by works. Apparently. Let it be stated categorically that dispensationalism has not and does not believe that the law of Moses was a means of salvation. This concept is rejected because it would make salvation by means of works. Salvation was and always is by grace through faith. While the content of faith has changed from age to age, depending on progressive revelation, the means of salvation never changes. The law was not given to serve as a means of salvation. That is standard dispensational teaching. Everything else is a Ruckman dumpster fire. Ruckman's Big Flap, Dispensational Salvation, Heresy Answered, John Henry, 2003. He was saying, link to a website that promotes dispensational salvation. I've never read this article by Dr. Ruckman till now, but I heard him say on a TV program that I watched in the 80s, People were saved in different ways in different dispensations, i.e., at time by works and by a combination of works and grace, and in our dispensation by grace. He clearly indicated that people were saved by works in other dispensations. In Dr. Ruckman's, this is Dr. Ruckman's Big Flap. In Dr. Ruckman's article, The Big Flap, he brings a lot of scriptures into play that are irrelevant to the issue. However, he comes up with nothing, nil, zero, zilch in providing any evidence to support his heresy. All the scriptural evidence is against it. Some of his major mistakes seem to be: 1. He believes salvation by grace alone is synonymous with being a member of the bride of Christ. 2. He believes the saints of some dispensations will not be born again. He does not believe the saints of some dispensations will be eternally secure. Now that's some weird stuff when you have saints in other dispensations not eternally secure. In the Big Flap, he repeats the heretical views that I heard him spout on TV that I spoke of earlier. He says faith and works are required in at least 2 dispensations: Hebrews under the law in the Old Testament, John 1, and the tribulation saints on earth after I'm assuming it means body of Christ, are caught out. Works are the requirements for salvation in the millennium as they were in Genesis 1:2. This is a quote from Peter Ruckman. Dr. Ruckman would have us believe that the tribulation saints are saved by a combination of faith and works as opposed to salvation by God's grace alone. This is Ruckman, and he's the only guy who taught this stuff. We'll go to another one, Bible Baptist Publications, Understanding Dispensational Salvation. This is by James Melton, who essentially goes in a tirade over this. A lot of folks point out Brother Ruckman as being a strong advocate of dispensational salvation, saying that he teaches people were saved different ways in different dispensations, and that's a heresy and all of that. Well, I don't believe it's a heresy necessarily once we take a little time to look closer at what's involved. Let's say, for the sake of argument, it is a heresy. Well, he goes on to destroy Peter Ruckman's idea and call him a heretic, basically. Yeah. These are all really good, big, long articles here. Dispensationalism, the deadliest heresy. This is one of the ones where you come up with dispensation, you just put in dispensational heresy. Dispensationalism is a theology that at its heart teaches that God deals with people differently at different periods of history. It is wretched heresy that deprives Christians of hope and condemns millions to hell. It is the root of the much popular Christian teaching, especially concerning end times. Dispensationalism was invented by Darby. Where is the one? Here we go. Salvation. According to dispensationalists of all stripes, the people's sins in the Old Testament period were dealt with by law and by animal sacrifice. There was no grace, just law. Only Jews could be saved. Who teaches that? Who teaches that? This is the attitude of people who don't want anything to do with dispensationalism because this is what they believe. I mean, this person took the time to write an article on it. This is what dispensationalists believe. That they believe that Old Testament people were only saved by works. That means that only the Jews could be saved. If nobody else knows what the works are, only the Jews can be saved. If it's salvation by faith plus works. Are we understanding this? Everybody who existed before, we'll say Abraham, went to hell with no chance of getting into heaven because they're under the dispensation of faith plus works, according to these people. If you're not a Jew and not doing the sacrifices, you go to hell. You have no choice in the matter unless you do the sacrifices. No faith. What about this Melchizedek guy? Oh, well, he was Jesus Christ, so he doesn't count. You have to go through some wild stuff. Now you're messing with the character of God, that no one could be saved other than the Jews following the covenant. That's called Calvinism. That's God deciding only the Jews are going to be saved and nobody else has a chance at salvation. That is Calvinism. Back to Gene Kim. Sorry if I breezed through some of those articles, but what are you going to do? It's more just to show that it's out there. I'll link the articles if you want to go through the entire thing. I want to make this less than an hour video.
What they want to do is that they're going to use the name dispensation so that they can call themselves dispensationalists, but then they're going to focus on attacking this. That's what they're going to do.
Right,
now,
because it's wrong.
Let me try to briefly explain. How many minutes do I have? All right. Okay, thank you so much. All right then, so let me go through this, and it looks like it's not going to be a short video, but I'll do as best as I can. Okay, the first thing is this. The first thing is that what these guys are going to try to do, which I covered to you in our previous teaching, is concerning the history, concerning progressive revelation. Okay, what is progressive revelation? So basically what we believe is that dispensationalism is that it's not like that we get all the doctrines at once and it carried on for the past 2,000 years. That's not how it works. Because you had a lot of corruption from the Catholic Church and Dark Ages, and they didn't even have the Bible or the freedom to study the Bible for themselves, right? So because of that, that's why when they started to study the Bible, their knowledge grew, right? That's what we believe in. Now, these people, they're going to claim that certain dispensationalists, like Larkin, Schofield, and others, that they did not teach dispensational salvations. But then all of a sudden, here comes Ruckman, who teaches dispensational salvations. Now, I came from Ruckman's school. So what they want to do is that they want to align me with this person, and they...
Yes, you are aligned with the person. BBC International, it's right in your intro. NPBI, BBI plus, or BBC plus PBI. And you name drop Peter Ruckman all the time. So yes, you are linked to Peter Ruckman, as all Ruckman students are.
I want to turn this into some kind of weird little cultic fringe.
And here's the other thing too, is this guy has to teach this stuff. Because I believe he works for the Institute. This is where he's doing his teaching. So who are you going to listen to? Someone who says it's a heretic, he's a heretic from outside? Or the guy who he says himself, this teaching came from Dr. Peter Ruckman. Who is Gene Kim? He's a professor for, I think, PBI, or maybe it's part of a different one, a Ruckman, and he's a graduate of Ruckman. For all I know, his job could be on the line if he doesn't teach this stuff.
But you got to realize this. One thing that they've got to understand is then you get rid of the definition of progressive revelation. Just because you point out Larkin and Schofield did not teach it, then that means we should get rid of the term progressive revelation. The point of progressive revelation is as you study the Bible more and more and more, you're going to find something new that another person before you didn't.
That isn't what progressive revelation is. Progressive revelation is a revelation from God.
Not teach.
And yes, it is revealed over time through men. It can be. As we get closer and closer to the end times, new things are going to pop out because hindsight is 20/20. Things start happening and you go, hey, we got to take another look at this passage here. Progressive revelation. Not some guy gets a kooky idea and starts a school and makes everybody teach it. That isn't progressive revelation. Has Denlinger got a progressive revelation with his stuff? Huh? God revealed to him to be a racist and live out in the woods? Was a great man of God to the squirrels and the chipmunks.
When you study that Bible more and more. Now, if that never happened to you in your individual life where you were studying the Bible, and didn't you find gleanings, some new gleanings that you're like, wow, I never saw it that way before? That's natural. That's natural. So Dr. Ruckman, he discovered this. So to say that, no, this is not progressive.
That's not discovering anything. There's a lot of people that believe in faith works. A lot of all the cults out there believe in faith works. The Catholics believe in faith plus works. Oh, but what sets Ruckman different is he believes in grace through faith today. Every other dispensation, it's works. It's the same thing. It's like Catholicism, except we're leaving out today. Nobody's got to work today. But every other dispensation, they got to work. Just like with Adam. He's got Adam working. See, God says he's got to work and till the fields because he messed up. Adam was saved by tilling fields, apparently.
Revelation with Ruckman, because what he did was totally off guard from what Larkin Schofield taught.
Completely.
Then what you're saying is you're getting rid of the definition of progressive revelation.
We're not talking about progressive
revelation. Of course
revelation.
It's not progressive revelation then. You know why? Because what progressive revelation means is that you're discovering something more and more.
Yeah, and it has to be true, too. Right? It's not... It has, in order for it to be a revelation, it has to be shown to be true. Right? And this doctrine is so blatantly false. I had a conversation with a young-ish person today and was kind of asking me how things were going or whatever and just bantering back and forth in text. And I just say, well, you know, the big thing right now is dispensational faith works salvation, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, well... what camp are you in? I'm like, well, faith through all dispensations. And he's like, yeah, kind of sounds stupid to have works, doesn't it? And this is from a young kid who knows the Bible better than Gene Kim, apparently. That it's just a stupid idea when you have Paul saying you cannot have works, otherwise you'd be able to boast about them. You cannot have works for salvation. Oh, look how saved I am. I kept the Sabbath, and I helped out my neighbor, and I paid my bills on time. I didn't eat any shellfish either. You know, you go boast about that stuff. I gave all of my money to charity. You can't have works in any system. You think any of that stuff is going to save your soul? It's the same thing today as any other dispensation. You know, you cannot work your way into heaven. It can't happen. It's not possible. How many works you got to do to wash that sin off of you? It ain't possible. It ain't happening.
That's what it is. So that is a fallacious argument which is easily debunked. Now, another thing is this, is that some get mad at me for teaching that Dr. Ruckman is in this line of dispensationalism, where I put him with Larkin and Schofield and other classical dispensationalists.
You see, Ruckman cannot be with Larkin and Schofield because he's not teaching the same thing as those guys did.
That's what I do. So a lot of people, they'll get upset at me concerning that one. Now, my easy answer to this one is, what you got to understand is this. If you want to insist that he has to be within this camp with Larkin, Schofield, and let's put Darby, then you know what you're saying? Then you're saying dispensationalism started with Darby. Do you know why? Because if you're going to force him to here, then you know what you got to do? You got to start it with Darby. That's right. Then you're saying that dispensationalism is a cult started by Darby in the 1800s. That's what you're teaching.
Well, Ruckmanism is a cult started by Peter Ruckman with this idea. I don't know, let's say that. Wildly different views. Ruckman, he says, Gene Kim says himself that Ruckman stands apart from Schofield, Larkin, and Darby. Well, if I use the Bible, 2 or 3 witnesses by the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, looks like there's 3 guys there. Who is teaching what Peter Ruckman is teaching? Nobody. Except people that went to his school. Nobody's going to... You imagine a debate with somebody who says they're a dispensational salvationist? If these people debated or took comments or weren't such cowards? Do you imagine that? How quickly they'd be destroyed? They'd be destroyed by an atheist. Just because the logic of their arguments is stupid.
Teaching. Because do you know why? Everybody differ from each other all the way from the beginning of church history. It is an undoubtable, irrefutable fact when you look at the beginning of church history to now that there were people who took up pieces of dispensationalism. And then people were adding things more and more and more and more and more. That's why I consider Ruckman to be within this same line. Why?
Oh,
Because
please.
dispensationalism is
Because he read a Bible.
not all within just one bunch. You go with Darby and then Larkin Schofield. That's it. That's not how it works. Dispensationalism, rightly dividing, is something that is started scripturally from the Bible. And then more and more people study the Bible more and more and more. So dispensationalism, the camp you should be in line in,
You
is
think people today study the Bible more than people did way back years ago before the internet? Eons ago? You think many people read the Bible today? Or you think there was more before? Before we had this television thing going? Huh? Dispensation is just a term and a tool. It's always been there.
within the scriptural camp. That's what it is. It's not picking which camp you want. Then if you pick a camp, then you're saying that then you got a cult there at the beginning. That's the idea.
We're talking about picking a camp. Now he is obviously in the Ruckman camp, right? So he brings up Larkin, Schofield, and Darby. So that means he's in the Ruckman camp. He's not in the Larkin, Schofield, Darby camp, who taught that in every dispensation you are saved by faith. So he's a dispensationalist, but he's not in the fathers of dispensationalism. He's not in their camp because his paycheck comes from Ruckman.
Another thing is this, is that some of them want to say this. Well, no, classical dispensationalism was all about premillennialism and the distinction of Israel and the church. So basically they're picking two doctrines. So that's why they're going to say, so we're not saying it started with Darby. No, classical dispensationalism was all the way at the beginning because it was all about premillennialism and the distinction of Israel and the church. Then you know what they did? What these people did is that they started to pick and choose which doctrine would qualify as genuine, real dispensationalism. I thought that the doctrines that we should find is in the Word of God on what it should define is real, genuine dispensationalism. So it makes more logical sense to say this method right here. They were trying to go by the Bible, and then they found pieces and started to add more and more and more, and then we reached up to here. But here's something. We don't believe it ended with Ruckman. Now you got a lot of people coming out. So then we had, Estep and Lentz was at the time of Ruckman. They're gone. So then you got like David Walker with his book. And then you also got a lot of other dispensationalists. And then you got Peacock with his school. And then you got Gipp with his school. And then you got all the other Bible believers. You can just look at our resources link with all the hundreds of...
These are all people I've never heard of before. Like, at all. Oh, look, I got a couple of people that agree with them. I never heard of these people. At all. Sam Gipp. I mean, how big and prominent and important is Sam Gipp? He might have a book out there, maybe. I don't know. I used to sub to his YouTube channel. I had 30 subscribers on it, and he never posted on it. So I don't know what Sam Gipp is doing. He's the only guy I heard of. Look at all these people that teach dispensational salvation. Look at all of them. 3 of them. They got Ruckman. That's it. That's all I was able to find, too.
Thousands of Bible believers around the world. In our resources link, we give you missionaries and churches. I mean, this is the camp. We find more and more things. We don't end it off like here. We study more. That's the idea.
Okay. Did those guys go to the PBI Institute? I don't know. I've never heard... I've heard, the doctrine of faith works, which people bring into this dispensation today, and they don't consider it works for whatever reason. Catholics, they admit to it being works, but a lot of the cults out there, Seventh-day Adventists and things like that, they say, well, we do it because we have faith and we're doing it out of our faith and blah, 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 but what the truth is if you don't do these works that they think you have to do, then you're kicked out of the church. So it is a mandatory requirement for salvation, and a lot of these cults believe in all sorts of kooky ideas with that, and it comes from, in the case of the Seventh-day Adventists, not being dispensational, but you break the Bible when you start inserting things like this and call it dispensationalism. Where you're causing confusion. You're not. Dispensationalism is there as a teaching tool to clear up confusion to people. Now it's being used as a tool to completely destroy the continuity of the Bible and God's character. How fair is it of God to only allow salvation by the Jews? That's it in the Old Testament. If you're a Jew, you're the only ones at a chance at salvation. And if you mess up your works, you're not going to heaven, or you're not going to Abraham's bosom, or whatever the case may be. And there are people out there who say the Jews weren't saved. Jesus hadn't died yet. Jews weren't saved. It's obvious they couldn't go to heaven. They went to paradise instead. You cause so many problems with this. And now, of course, like I said, Gene Kim and these guys are the ones that have to repeat dispensational salvation is that's it. If you don't believe in that, you're a heretic, he said in the beginning. They're the ones that are putting this doctrine out there, and they are the ones saying that if you do not believe it, you're a heretic. They're the ones doing it. And then they're coming out with videos saying they're mad they're getting flack for it. And they won't have an honest discussion. They won't put out videos answering the questions about this kooky doctrine. They won't answer comments. What do they expect? And they're not going to, in Gene Kim's position, depending on how close he is linked with PBI, he cannot say anything other than dispensational salvation because that's what the school teaches. And if his paycheck is in any way involved in what he is teaching, if he's that closely affiliated still, he cannot teach anything else. So the last thing he's going to do is go and debate somebody or get into a conversation with somebody who knows what they're talking about. Even any old regular dispensationalist out there. As from my research, what I've garnered, the only one who is teaching anything remotely close to what he is are A, cults, and B, Peter Ruckman. That's it. And we've been going long enough. So with that, we're out of here. Throw away them dispensations. We don't need them. You get kooks like this in here. Crazy.